Then, two different men drive up in a similar... Don't shake your head, I'm not done yet. Wait till you hear the whole thing. So you can understand this now. Two different men drive up in a similar-looking car.
Now, Pavarotti was a good friend.
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. As a disclaimer, this channel's for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions. I'm not here to slander anyone. Let's get started. This is part 3 of 5. Now, this is the episode that I have worked really hard to be as careful as I possibly can with, because I don't want to send the wrong impression. But I have come to these conclusions based on many different circumstances regarding this case. As I go through this, I'm going to back up what I'm saying with the evidence, and then I'm going to give my opinion on what the evidence is telling me. So I'm going to paint the picture with the actual evidence, and then I'm going to tell you what I think happened. And I happen to believe that I'm correct in this. But it's very important for me to explain this in the proper way, because again, I don't want to send the wrong message. Now, as I go through this, I'm hoping that I didn't scare my channel members too much last night, because I took out all of the evidence and all of my speaking, and I gave them a 2-minute video of just strictly what I think happened, and it probably unnerved some of them. So hopefully this complete video will fill in those blanks and help you to understand what my perspective is on this and why it is. And I'm going to start with another schematic. And this one is basically discussing the evidence that the prosecution will try to use against Mr. Kohberger. And as we go through this evidence, I have to explain why I feel like they think they have evidence in this manner against Mr. Kohberger. So let's get into it. Okay, so we're trying to figure out why Bryan Kohberger is the person on trial for this atrocity. And when we look at the evidence that the prosecution is going to try to use against Mr. Kohberger, it's evidence that we're all familiar with. Now, I'm going to put a big X, as you can see, on the DNA at this point. I will explain the DNA in another video. And I'm also going to put an X on the suspect description by DM, because that is not a description at all. That is circumstantially going to try to corroborate the other evidence, which the other evidence is strictly there to put Kohberger in a location where he could have possibly committed the atrocity, even though all the other evidence points to it's impossible. Now, we're going to start with the Elantra and all of the sightings of the Elantra, and we're going to discuss that. And then, of course, there is the CSLI data. They're going to try to corroborate the Elantra's movements with that as much as they can. But then there is the DoorDash witness. And I can assure you that the DoorDash is a witness in this case. And then there is the informant. And I can assure you there is an informant in this case that the prosecution will turn into a witness if push comes to shove. So we have to understand all of this for the outcomes of everything that I'm about to discuss to fit. But once we do understand all of this, I think you're going to see how everything in this case actually fits together. and why they're trying to prosecute Mr. Kohberger. And we're going to start with the movements of the Elantra. Actually, we're not. We're going to start with the actual statements from the defense regarding the alibi of Bryan Kohberger on the night of the atrocity. Okay, so when we look at the alibi statement from the defense, it is a little bit convoluted when you add in everything that the defense was saying that didn't really pertain to what Bryan Kohberger was doing the night of the atrocity. So I've taken out the fluff, and I'm using just these statements from the defense to paint this picture. And I think you'll agree by doing it this way, it makes everything much more clear. But you can see it says Mr. Kohberger was out driving in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. He drove throughout the area south of Pullman, Washington, west of Moscow, Idaho, including Wawaway Park. Now, Mr. Kohberger intends to offer testimony of Cy Ray to show that Bryan Kohberger's mobile device was south of Pullman, Washington, and west of Moscow, Idaho on November 13, 2022. That Bryan Kohberger's mobile device did not travel east on the Moscow-Pullman Highway in the early morning hours of November 13th, and thus could not be the vehicle captured on video along the Moscow-Pullman Highway near Floyd's cannabis shop. So just taking a strict reading of this, it's saying that he drove to Wawaway Park. He did not drive east on the Moscow-Pullman Highway in the early morning hours, so that's not his vehicle captured on video along the Moscow-Pullman Highway near Floyd Cannabis Shop. Now see, it took me a while to figure this out, but this is what the defense is laying the groundwork for, to be able to prove that that is not Bryan Kohberger's vehicle making the first three initial passes around the King Road residence. And I'm going to show you that, because with him going to Wawaway Park first, he can't be in the King Road neighborhood until at least 4:03 a.m. So all of the sightings of the first vehicle in the neighborhood were not Bryan Kohberger's. But by no means are they suggesting that Bryan Kohberger did not go to the King Road neighborhood in their alibi statement. Think of this first page as the first stop for Bryan Kohberger the night of the atrocity. Then the second part of the alibi statement is going to be everything that happened after that initial trip to Wawaway Park. And you can see they say additional information as to Mr. Kohberger's whereabouts as the early morning hours progressed, which means after the trip to Wawaway, including additional analysis by Mr. Ray, will be provided once the state provides discovery requested and now subject to an upcoming motion to compel. So they're stating that after his trip to Wawaway, they'll tell the state more about what happened after that, but only until they get the state's discovery on the CAS data, because they don't want the state to use that information and alter it after they make their statements. And that is exactly what the defense is describing in the alibi up until this point. So based on that, here's what I envision happened up until the time that Mr. Kohberger arrives in the King Road neighborhood. So we start with the white Elantra going north at 2:44 a.m. in Washington State on Southeast Nevada Street, Northeast Stadium Way, where it's captured on video. And then there is an elapsed time as it's next seen coming south on Southeast Nevada Street and Stadium Way and turning towards Highway 270. So there's a time gap as he was north on Southeast Nevada Street, and here's exactly what I believe happened. Now, after that brief meeting with Emma, and I do believe it was Bryan Kohberger alone at this point as he met with Emma, and I'm going to go into a lot of detail about that in part 4, but I believe he was alone when he met with Emma and he placed his order for the evening. And she had just picked up the DoorDash, as you learned in part 1. So he places his order. She knows what time she's supposed to deliver her previous order that she went to Jack in the Box for. So I believe she told Mr. Kohberger to meet her in the King Road neighborhood on Queen Road. I don't believe she told him exactly where to meet her, just on Queen Road at 4 a.m. Follow along. I assure you it will make sense. Now, as we read the alibi statement again, we know that that is not Bryan Kohberger's car captured on Moscow Pullman Highway near Floyd Cannabis Shop, because he did not travel east on Moscow Pullman Highway in the early morning hours of November 13th. So when his vehicle hits 270, he could not have gone east because he would have been captured by the video on Bishop Boulevard, and we know he didn't. So here's what I think happened. Timing is everything. So once he picked up Kopaka at the Coffee House Apartments, they then headed west on 270 to Wawaway Park, just like the alibi states. Now, watch what happens with the times of the drives as he goes to Wawaway and then where he progresses from Wawaway with Kopaka. Now, by them arriving at 4:03 a.m. perfectly timed for the drive, it tells us that the PCA, when it describes a review of footage from multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood, showed multiple sightings of suspect vehicle 1 starting at 3:29. We know it's not Kohberger because of what I just showed you, and ending at 4:20. These sightings show suspect vehicle 1 makes an initial 3 passes by the 1122 King Road residence and then leave via Walenta Drive. Well, the Linda Lane video shows those 3 passes, and the last pass of those 3 passes was at 3:57 a.m. before Kohberger could even be at the King Road neighborhood. And we've all seen the Linda Lane videos. I'm not going to sit here and make you watch them. But the first 3 passes of that vehicle were very specific. That vehicle, as it turned on Linda Lane, it knew exactly where it was going. It made the right turn and circled that neighborhood 3 times in a manner in which it knew exactly where it was going. Came in, circled 3 times, and then left at 3:57 a.m. Unlike the movements of the vehicle that arrives at 4:04, perfectly in line with the time that Kohberger and Kopacka would have arrived. Now, as we read, suspect vehicle 1 can be seen entering the area a 4th time. It should read, could be seen entering the area for the 1st time at approximately 4:04 a.m. And that's exactly what the defense is going to describe in this. It can be seen driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of 500 Queen Road, number 52, and then driving back westbound on King Road. When suspect vehicle 1 is in front of the King Road residence, it appeared to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. The vehicle then continued to the intersection of Queen Road and King Road, where it can be seen completing a 3-point turn, and then driving eastbound again down Queen Road. And then it finishes with suspect vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of the King Road residence at 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. And the reason that it skips the last part, which is the vehicle pulling in front of the Queen Road apartments, driving past where he's supposed to turn right, having to stop, back up, and then turn right to go around the apartments, is law enforcement did not have the Queen Road video at this point in the investigation. They got it later, probably close to when we got it. So when you look at the movements of this vehicle, we know it's not the same vehicle based just on the movements. The other vehicle had already made 3 perfect passes. This vehicle is displaying very odd characteristics of driving. And when you stop and you really put it together, here is what I believe this vehicle is doing, and it makes perfect sense. Because Kohberger and Kopacka did not know where they were meeting their hookup in the Queen Road neighborhood. They just knew it was Queen Road. So as they pull in the neighborhood at 4:04, they're driving and they're looking for their hookup. As they see their hookup in the parking area of the King Road residence, as they're driving by, they go, hey, there she is. So they stop in front of Queen Road apartments and they turn around. As they come back, they go to pull in the driveway. She motions them to meet her on top of the hill. So they have to back up, head up Queen Road, do a 3-point turn at Queen and King. Then they come back. As they go past the Queen Road apartments, they're not familiar where to turn right to go around the apartment, so they go past it. Have to stop, back up, make the right. Then as they go around, they pull next to the King Road residence where the atrocity occurs, and they sit there and wait for the DoorDash driver to get back in her car and pull up and give them what they've been waiting for. That is what happened. And when you look at it that way, this makes perfect sense. Now, hopefully you've watched part 1 and part 2 before you're watching this one, because then you would know that Mr. TF, as the lookout, is strategically placed right there to be able to see the DoorDash driver, all of her interactions with Kohberger and Kopaka, and he's got a bird's eye view of the white Elantra with 2 males in it, and let me tell you what he sees. I'm sure he has no idea who Bryan Kohberger is or his white Elantra, but he's got a bird's eye view, and I'm sure he could clearly see Kopaka. And let me tell you, everybody around there knew Kopaka, especially those involved in narcotics. So that would be somebody he would easily recognize. Now, I don't believe he recognized the DoorDash driver, however, but he knew the DoorDash driver talked to Kopaka and Kohberger, and he's seen the delivery to the house. You can be assured of that. And I will go over a lot more in the investigation in upcoming parts to this series that will explain that in detail. Now, when the defense presented their alibi statement, because Bill Thompson doesn't know all of this and doesn't know what the defense's strategy was, he automatically assumed the defense was going to try to claim that Kohberger was never at the residence at all, and he wasn't even in Moscow, Idaho. So as you can see, his response here is very telling. And it starts with, as the defendant reference to potential testimony about the location of defendant's cell phone on the morning of November 13th, this information does not rise to the level of an alibi at the time of the homicides, because the defendant's cell phone stopped reporting to the cellular network before the homicides and continued to not report until after the homicides. Now, that is Bill Thompson acknowledging there's no phone data during the atrocity at all. So, with no phone data during the atrocity at all that could verify where Kohberger was during the atrocity, then I need you to really understand that, because this next part that I'm about to read to you is going to make a lot more sense if you understand that neither the defense nor the prosecution has cell phone location data during the time of the atrocity, and that is declared right here by Bill Thompson himself. So when he says the location of defendant's cell phone at times other than the time of the homicides is not proof of or relevant to the defendant's specific location at the time of the homicides, approximately 4 to 4:30 a.m. on November 13, 2022. Well, I've already explained that Kohberger's car didn't even park until 4:08. So what is this 4 a.m.? And he sped away at 4:20. So what is this 4:30? Again, it doesn't match up. But notice this next statement. The state requests additional time pursuant to Idaho Code 19.5.19.5 to prepare a list of witnesses to establish the defendant's presence at the scene of the homicides. So all his witnesses are going to establish is his presence at the scene, meaning his vehicle sitting there next to the house. And these are not expert witnesses, because he just told you that there's no cell data. There's no expert witness that could place him there based on that. Bill Thompson said that. So this list of witnesses are actual witnesses that would place his car there during the time of the atrocity. That is why this happened. And it's very important to understand that this is exactly what TF gave them. It was Kopaka and DoorDash. And he made his deal with the prosecutor, the judge, everybody involved to give this information. But He did it in this order, and I am very confident of that because of the way the rest of the investigation played out. And I'm going to show you how that happened in part 4 of this series. But once you understand this is how they got to Kohberger, this is the evidence they're going to try to use against him in trial. And when you look at everything exactly the way that I have laid it out, then all of the other things that you know begin to make sense in this case. Now, you know, after that, it's a tough position to be in because Kohberger and Kopacka think they have witnessed and heard something terrible, but they can't say it because they can't explain what they were doing sitting right there. It would not only look bad on them, but to explain why they were really there, which was doing narcotics, would ruin everything for Kohberger, at least. And I'm sure Kopacka wasn't, wouldn't have been thrilled to go and turn himself in for anything. So not only can they not say anything, but they're not even sure what had really happened at this point. And this tells the story because further review indicated that the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13, 2022 that are consistent with the 8458 phone leaving the area of the Kohberger residence at approximately 9 a.m., traveling to Moscow, Idaho. Specifically, the phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to the King Road residence between 9:12 and 9:21. The phone next utilized cellular resources that are consistent with the phone traveling back to the Kohberger residence and arriving to the area at 9:32. So what happened here? They went home. He dropped off Kopacka. They're kind of freaking out. Kohberger, who probably had plans to do some driving this weekend, that's why he wanted to stay up all weekend long, he is probably freaking out at his apartment. And he decides at 9, I'm going to drive over there and just see if there's any police or anything and see if anything really happened. So he drives over to the King Road residence and he sees a quiet street, nothing going on, no police at the residence, and he's probably reassured, okay, well, maybe it was nothing. So he goes right back to his apartment. He continues on with his plans for the weekend. And what's funny is when you look at the coverage of Kohberger's movements, when the notices to all of the students are sent out, you can almost see by the movements of his vehicle him freaking out when he hears the news. He turns around, drives backwards 30 minutes, and then stops and turns around and continues driving to where he was going. And that is a sure sign of him freaking out, knowing what he heard and seen was real. And now there's real implications against him and Kopacka because of where they were and the fact that they cannot come forward. And that's why all of the news reports were looking for the Hyundai Elantra and the occupants in it because they may have been potential witnesses. But after a certain period of time, when no other suspects were coming to light, those potential witnesses that they couldn't find, well, they turned into suspects, and the end result is they turned into one of them unalived and the other one on trial. Now, I wish I could say this is just my theory at this point, and it's based on just what I'm thinking. But I assure you, I have gone through so much, vetted so much, so many different angles. I'm about 90 to 95% confident, if not more than that what I'm describing here is what happened. And I'm going to continue with this series to validate everything that I'm saying. This is not just me making up some stuff, I assure you. But as you look at events that happened after this during the investigation part, there doesn't seem to be another way around it. So again, I wanted to be very careful in the way that I put this information out in this video, because I by no means want to try to implicate Mr. Kohberger in this atrocity. It had nothing to do with it. But just like in the My Cousin Vinny clip that started this video, it's a case of very similar vehicles doing two totally different things, and I'll be danged if you don't have My Cousin Vinny, what is it, Ralph Macchio, and the other guy, one's unalived and one of them sitting in a jail cell right now. We're literally looking at a My Cousin Vinny case, except with a little bit more deviousness on the law enforcement side than in My Cousin Vinny, I assure you. But I hope you have watched part 1 and part 2 of this series before you watch this one. If for some reason you haven't, then you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to go back and watch part 1, part 2, and then watch this one again for it to actually make sense. And I'll put the links for part 1 and part 2 in the description of this video. And part 4 and part 5, I assure you, are going to be just as information filled. But please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, your thoughts, your criticisms. And until next time, Pavarotti's out.